Hello, Mrs. Lavoie's class. I decided I think we need to finish Meet Addie. It was a couple of weeks ago that we last read, and I'm going to give you a couple of reminders about where we left off. Addie and Mama were running away to freedom, and Mama couldn't swim, and Addie saved her, and at the very end, she reached up on her neck and she found out that she had some leeches stuck to her. Do you remember that part? So that's where we left Addie and Mama last time. And I'm just going to turn off my phone so nobody interrupts us. Okay. Addie and her mother traveled for hours before Mama spotted the railroad tracks. We're almost to freedom. Remember, well, we're not almost to freedom, but when they get to the railroad tracks, do you remember that that is where the safe house is, where there's going to be a person who's on the runaway slaves' side, who's going to help them get to freedom? Addie had never seen tracks before. They were shining silver, and they pointed the way north to freedom. "These got to be the tracks your father talked about," Mama whispered. "We got to be extra careful out here. There ain't hardly a place to hide." They had seen no one since they started their escape, but tracks meant a train could come at any time. Travelers might spot them. They could trust no one. Addie and her mother followed the path of the tracks in the moonlight. When the noises of the night were gone and bird songs began to fill the air, they found a thick clump of pine trees near a curve in the tracks. Gathering dead branches and brush, they made a shelter and crawled inside. Addie could barely keep her eyes open. She was too tired to slap at the ants that crawled on her legs or swat at the flies buzzing over her head. She curled up and rested her head on her mother's chest. "I'm real proud of you," Mama whispered as she gently stroked Addie's hair away from her face. Addie smiled. She could feel her mother's heart beating. It was a soothing sound. And there's a picture of the leech. We don't really want to see that. And the railroad tracks. Heading to freedom. Chapter 5. A low rumble woke Addie and her mother. Addie thought it sounded like thunder. Then a light appeared far in the distance. Addie could see it moving toward her, getting bigger and bigger. It looked as if the moon had fallen from the sky and was rolling through the tops of the trees. Safe in the darkness, Addie and her mother crept out of their shelter just in time to see something Addie had only heard about. A train. She could make out its shape charging through the darkness. The engine was spitting red sparks, and a ribbon of smoke ran along the length of the train. As it passed along a curve in the tracks, Addie watched its rear light disappear into the distance, but instead of moving away in a straight line, the train turned to the right. Addie was puzzled. Then she understood. The train had turned onto a set of tracks that she could not even see yet. So it's a place where two sets of tracks cross each other, kind of like a plus sign. And that's what she was told to look for. "Mama, we hear," Addie said a little too loudly. Then she lowered her voice. Oops, lost the light. The safe house has to be near the place where the train turned. We did it. We made it, Mama. Addie threw her arms around Mama. "I think you're right," Mama said. "Let's go." Addie and her mother ran hand in hand toward the place where the train had turned. "We safe now," Addie exclaimed. "We going to Philadelphia." "We ain't there yet," Mama said sharply. "Hush now." "We gonna see Sam and Papa," Addie went on. "And then we come back for Esther, and the whole family be together again." Addie pictured them all in Philadelphia, living in a beautiful house. "Freedom ain't that easy, girl," warned Mama. "Don't get your hopes too high." But Addie didn't hear her. Spurred on by her thoughts of Philadelphia, she moved faster and faster, pulling away from Mama. Running fast, she felt the cowrie shell beat against her chest. She was going to Remember the cowrie shell, which was her great-grandmother's from Africa? And she has it threaded around her neck, and instead of a chain, she's got her brother Sam's leather shoelace. It was a long way to the place where the train had turned, but Addie was still running when she saw a small light. I don't think she should have left her mother, do you? I think Addie's being a little bit reckless right now. It looked like the glow of a lantern. Addie thought it must be in the window of the safe house. She raced toward it, her mother far behind. It was not until she was closer that she saw she was wrong. She stopped suddenly. The light was from a small campfire in a clearing near the tracks. A group of men were gathered around it. Addie could see them lying on the ground, sleeping. She was about to turn and run back the other way when she heard a gruff voice call out, "Who's there?" Addie turned. She could see the face of a white man in the light of the fire. He had on a gray jacket and gray pants. He was a Confederate soldier. That means he's on the side of the South, not the North. And the North is the side that is going to be friendly to runaway slaves. He was staring right at her. "Oh, it's you, boy. Bring me some water," the soldier said. Here's a picture. Can you see Addie in the foreground? And there's the fire. And the soldier is over there by his tent. Although Addie knew he was looking right at her, she didn't think he was talking to her. He was talking to some boy. But what boy? Just then Addie remembered that she was wearing a disguise. She was the boy. Desperately, Addie looked around, and then she saw a bucket of water. To get to it, she had to walk right through the soldiers' camp. She saw another soldier on the ground stir. He rolled over. What if they all woke up and captured her? Addie lowered her head, touched the cowrie shell briefly for courage, and then she began to move. Inside she was shaking, but on the outside she was walking straight and strong past the sleeping soldiers. She picked up the bucket and she brought it to the soldier. "Train scare you, did it, boy?" the soldier asked. Addie kept her head down and she nodded. "You'll get used to it after a while. Get on back to sleep," the soldier said. Addie wanted to rush back into the woods, but she knew she couldn't. She acted as though she belonged to the camp. She walked to the edge of the clearing and she lay down. The soldier lay down too, and Addie waited a few minutes until she could hear him snoring. And then, as quietly as she could, Addie crept away from the soldiers and into the woods. "I gotta warn Mama," Addie thought. Just when she had gotten far enough away from the camp to start running, someone reached out and grabbed her. Yikes! It was Mama. She pulled Addie so close to her that Addie could feel the shell of her necklace pressed between them. Mama held Addie for a long moment and then led her away. When they were far from the camp, Mama spoke at last. "I was watching you with them soldiers, Addie, and I was holding my breath the whole time. But you did it, girl. You kept your feelings inside this time. Your papa would be proud of you." They walked farther along the tracks until they came to the place where two sets of tracks met and formed a silvery cross. A house stood just beyond the cross, up on a little hill. It was white, with red shutters. Papa had been right. To Addie, it seemed that the house was just waiting for them. They did not have to run to it. They only had to walk and knock on the door where freedom was. It would open to them. Addie and her mother crouched in the shadows, staring at the white house. There was no light from inside. And I think that's where we will leave it today. And next week, we will finish it. So if you have any thoughts about the part we read today, you can leave a little message on your teacher's page, her Weebly page, and we can talk back and forth on that because I can answer you. Okay, guys, I hope you have a good weekend, and I'll send you more next week.